If you're considering exiting your business within the next 10 years, you're not alone. 75% of owners of businesses out there want exactly that. But here's the problem with that. 10 years is a long time, and most owners push off that planning until it's way too late. And because of that, 75% of owners who do sell regret it within 12 months of selling. And they regret it for a few reasons. And the first is the obvious reasons, which is that they didn't get what they wanted from the sale. Either they're stuck working in the business through some buyout contract, or they didn't get the price that they wanted, but also they didn't plan personally for the exit. And they found that the joy of sitting on the beach or hitting a golf ball only lasts for so long until you get bored. So today I'm going to share with you how to use the EOS tools to create a sellable or scalable company. Even if you never plan to sell, you should always be prepared so that you don't fall into that regret statistic. So here's part of the problem is that most owners believe that exit planning is only something that you do once you decide to sell your business. And then anything before that, and this is especially true in legacy companies and family businesses, anything before the idea of a sale is taboo to talk about. We never talk about exit planning. Why? Because we're never going to sell the business. All right. But that's what gets a lot of companies into trouble, especially when 90% of family businesses never make it to the third generation or beyond. So the problem is that most organizations, most business owners start way too late. And because of that, they're not prepared. They leave a lot of money on the table, and the business continues to be dependent upon them even after the sale. I know this world intimately, not just as an EOS implementer and certified exit planning advisor, but also as somebody who's run a fourth generation family business with 60 family member owners and 150 employees that was 100 years old. We were on the brink of insolvency and nearly went out of business simply because we weren't prepared. But fortunately, through the tools that I'm about to share with you through EOS, fortunately through EOS, we were able to turn the company around and fix the foundational structure of our business so that we could build a scalable model, even if we decided to sell or not to sell, which we didn't decide to sell. So let's touch again on why most owners regret selling their company within a year. This 75% of owners regret selling their business. That statistic comes from the Exit Planning Institute. And a lot of it has to do with this idea of the value gap, meaning that when owners decide that they want to sell something, a lot of times they have a number in their head, a number that they need or that they want to exit the business. Maybe it's $10 million. Maybe they want to sell their business for $10 million. And that's going to give them the retirement of their dreams to ride off into the sunset, sip margaritas on the beach somewhere for the rest of eternity. But what really happens is then they get the valuations. And as they go through this process, they realize they're given quotes that might be 4.5 million or 5 million. Or maybe even less. And the owner's left thinking, but why? I've heard people in our industry are getting 7 or 8 or 10 times their earnings. And if we were to get 10 times our earnings, we'd be worth 10 or $12 million. But in reality, it doesn't always work like that because it's not based solely off the financials. The financial returns really only account for a percentage of the valuation process. There are actually more factors that go into valuing a business. And this is where the preparation side comes in. And this is where EOS can help. And it's unfortunately a heartbreaking truth because a lot of owners will work their butts off in the organization to build the financial value in their organization, to raise the EBITDA to a certain degree so that they get to a point where it's worth millions. And in their mind, they can get a large multiple of that. But sadly, especially strategic buyers, they see that much of the operation is tied to the owner's involvement, and they want to run the other way because to them, once the owner leaves, so does most of the value, so do the relationships, all of that stuff. It's more important to focus on the actual structural integrity of the business and the intangible capitals that support the financial capital that is going to give you the highest value. And so that's why it's important to start preparing early, at least a few years in advance, in order to start building that structural value of the business. And that's going to narrow the value gap over time. And when I'm talking about the value gap, what I'm talking about is the expectation of value that the owner has in their mind that they need or that they want to get from the business, and the actual value that it is worth right now. And that's usually a lot of times rooted in those intangible capitals, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But fundamentally, what I want to get across here is that if the owner is so entrenched in the business and so tied to the business, meaning the customers are there because of the owner, that the employees stay because of the owner, that the owner is just the glue that is holding everyone together, well, then that's gonna hold back the transferable value of the business. So my first piece of advice to owners is continue to try to find ways so that you are not the most valuable person in the business, that you don't have some kind of key player constraint where you are able to remove yourself from being everything in the business and you're able to just operate as an owner. Some other reasons why buyers might discount your business. These are also rooted in those intangible capitals that we're talking about. It could be due to customer concentration. Maybe you have a lot of your revenue tied to a single customer. What if 50% of your revenue is tied to Walmart, for example? Well, that immediately decreases your value, because if you lose that customer, you lose 50% of your revenue. So more of having your customers spread out more across multiple customers, or revenue spread out across multiple customers, it makes your business more valuable. It could be lack of systems, meaning that you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, or you're performing on that's the way we've always done it kind of platform. Those lack of systems really contribute to a lot of chaos and a lot of extra work, and really decrease the value of the business. Or that there's no solid leadership team or culture that defines great people in the organization. There could be a lot of just inherent conflict that's not being resolved. And this could be completely under the surface. It could be buried under years and years and years and decades of toxic artificial harmony. It could be that you just have a lifestyle business where the company exists just to fund your preferred way of living. And that's fine too. I mean, a lot of people run lifestyle businesses, and that's fine, but don't expect that lifestyle business to have a high transferable value. So that's why really 75% of owners tend to regret selling after selling the business. They didn't really build something sellable. So what's the alternative? The alternative is to focus primarily and obsessively on the value in the business. And this isn't just the number. I'm talking about the value that's provided to customers, the value that is provided to employees, the value within that creates the value of the organization. A lot of owners are, and especially of legacy businesses, are afraid to talk about the idea of selling because they don't want to spook their employees into running off. The employees might get a whiff that they're selling, and what the heck is going on there? But in reality, the idea of preparing to sell does not necessarily equal selling. You don't have to go through a transaction in order to build your business to be a sellable business. This, at the very first part of it, is an insurance policy to make sure that should anything happen, that you are prepared to sell when you need to. And here's why that's important. Because in addition to just setting the business up should you want to sell, there may be situations where you need to sell, where it's outside of your control. Things like death or disability or divorce, or the things that we don't expect. And those things come in. So if you're better prepared for those situations by just building a valuable business, well, then you have less headaches when you want to sell, and you have more money in your pocket when you do. You're giving yourself options. You're giving yourself that freedom. And when you're always ready to sell, then you may never have to. And that's great. And on the front end, you have a valuable business where everybody's happy to be working there. So it's really a no-lose situation. That's just the big first mindset shift you have to get into, is that just because you're preparing your business to be sellable does not mean that you necessarily have to sell. It just means that you're creating options. So now let's talk about how EOS can strengthen the intangible capitals that will support the financial capital. So just in a nutshell, you have financial capital, which is the tangible capital that you have in your business. The financial capital comes in the form of cash, of working capital, of the actual profitability of the business. And a lot of times, part of the valuation of a company is based on the earnings of the business, or the profitability, or the EBITDA, or whatever you want to call it. And we tend to overestimate how much of the value of a business is actually dependent on that EBITDA. Of course, it plays a role in that, but it's within the four other types of capital, the intangible capitals, where the multiple can actually grow. Those four other intangible capitals are customer capital, human capital, social capital, and structural capital. Human capital, customer capital, structural capital, and social capital that also support the financial capital. And what often tends to happen is you might have maybe $2 million in EBITDA, but because you don't have the strong other sources of capital, the other four intangible capitals are not strong, well, you might be valued at a 2 or 3x multiple, because a strategic buyer may come in and just not like the idea of that, having to fix those things. It's going to be on them. And there's a lot more risk involved in terms of that transaction. You may have a company that is profitable, but the value of the business may be worth nothing because the value of those intangible capitals is so poor. But on the contrary end of that, if you have strong human capital, strong structural capital, social capital, and customer capital, what happens then is that is when a strategic buyer sees that, and that same $2 million of EBITDA that they have with strong intangible capitals, so you're going to see that multiple grow from, say, 2 or 3x to maybe a 6 or 7 or even 8 to 10x, depending on the industry that you're in and a certain number of factors. But ultimately, the multiple that you get for that could be higher. And it's really based on the type of buyer that you attract. Because when you have great financial capital, but you also have great intangible capitals, you're attracting a certain type of strategic buyer. You might be attracting a larger company that wants to roll you up into their business. And there's just an inherent value in there above and beyond just the financial return that they're getting. Or you might have a private equity firm that can roll it up. There's strategy in there. But if you don't have strong intangibles, if it's not easy to roll up, if you're not making it easy, and it's going to be a lot of work to fix the business, well, what's going to happen is you're not going to have those strategic buyers wanting to come into your business. So that higher multiple can result in millions of dollars. Just think of that $2 million in EBITDA that you have in your business that's doing 10 million in revenue, say. Well, that $2 million in EBITDA with no support on the intangible capitals may go on the market for somewhere between $2 and $3 million, maybe $4 million. But if it's going at a best in class on those intangibles, the multiple you might get is, say, 6 times that $2 million. So you might get $12 million. That's a difference of almost $10 million on that same $2 million of EBITDA. So that's the value that we're looking at. That's why we want to strengthen those capitals. So let's talk about what those intangible capitals really are. The first is the human capital. Human capital is things like right people, right seats. It's making sure that you have the right type of culture for your organization. That culture is strong, that you retain people, that you're able to attract the right type of talent. And that's the strength of the human capital from within the organization. It transcends any one person, meaning that the business is not dependent on key people, but that you're attracting such talent from the outside that you can replace pretty much anybody that would want to leave, but nobody's wanting to leave because you have such a great culture. That's what a really strong human capital looks like. How can EOS help you with human capital? Well, it's things like the people component of EOS. It's getting right people in the right seats, using the accountability chart and making sure that you're focusing on the structure of the organization first, making sure that you are defining clearly the functions of the organization, defining clearly the roles of the people in the organization, then putting the right people in the right seats and holding them accountable with quarterly conversations and making sure that you're giving that feedback and truly holding them accountable to the core values, to the roles, and of course, the rocks that they're setting, the goals that they're setting to go forward. That's truly strengthening that human capital. And that's why EOS is great for strengthening human capital, is that it really truly has a mechanism to define great people for the organization. People are some of the biggest frustrations in businesses. People don't want to inherit your drama from the organization. They want to buy great cultures so that they can roll those great cultures, the great people into their organizations. Second form of capital that you want to strengthen is called the customer capital. And customer capital is basically the strength of your customer relationships. These are things like recurring revenue models, strength of the customer relationships you have. It's making sure that you don't have that customer concentration issue that we were talking about earlier, that your revenue is spread out around a variety of customers, so that if you lose one, it doesn't totally break your bank. But the way that you can strengthen the customer capital is by doing things like measuring the strength of your customer relationships on your scorecard. What's your NPS score? How many referrals are you getting from your customers? And what is your recurring revenue that is coming in from that? Measuring that kind of stuff from your scorecard is going to help you to really evaluate the strength of that customer capital, using the data component, generally speaking, to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable. It's also where your marketing strategy is going to come into play on your VTO. When you clearly define your target market and you're laser focused on marketing and selling to that target market, and you're building a customer base within that target market that is strong and diverse, and you're also getting peripheral markets from that target market through referrals, that's how you really strengthen the customer capital. And so that marketing strategy is a really, really clear way to help you differentiate yourself. What kills that valuation fast, though, is, again, where you have like pure customer concentration. That's not to say don't give up the customer that's going to make you millions of dollars, because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But once you start to scale up some of that customer base, maybe you look at scaling into different markets with the same level of customer, or ask yourself, is this customer truly part of our target market? I'll say that when you strengthen your human capital and you strengthen your vision traction organizer, meaning you're clear on what your core focus is, you're clear on what your marketing strategy is, you're going to, by that process, strengthen your customer capital as well, as long as you continue to measure the right things on your scorecard as well. And then the next intangible capital is the structural capital. And the structural capital is really just the structure of your business, things like your processes, things like your scorecard, things like your people component, the right structure with the accountability chart. So are all of your core processes, the handful of core processes that you have documented and clarified, followed by all? And also, are you documenting those sub-level processes like SOPs that are really important? How's your IP and your meeting cadence with regard to how you're meeting with your leadership team and getting issues onto the table? This is how your machine really works. So everything within EOS, if you're operating well together, if you're operating at 80% strong or better on those 6 key components, really contributes to your structural capital. So it's all about bringing that vision down to the ground level and executing on it consistently. Make sure that you're just driving towards 80% strong or better on all of those EOS 6 key components. That's where you start to see the difference in the strength in that structural capital. Then the final intangible capital that can strengthen the value of your business is the social capital. And this is really part of your cultural health as well. And it's not just your culture from the inside, it's how you're represented externally to your communities, to your industries. Are you leading that industry? Are you in the right kinds of trade groups? Are you really contributing to your community in a very positive way? Are you leading the charge in your industry with regard to innovation and everything like that? So this all comes down to cultural health within your VTO, within your vision traction organizer. It starts with core values. Are you truly living out those core values that you defined? Are you hiring, firing, rewarding, and recognizing based on it? Are you leading outwardly with trust, openness, and honesty? And are you forming the strong bonds within your organization and within your communities? That's the kind of stuff that really builds the social capital and really drives the brand recognition. Your cultural identity and integrity together gives you trust inside and outside of the organization. And EOS is all built on this level of transparency and outward thinking. Buyers see that healthier culture and they think, oh, good, we won't have to spend 3 years cleaning up the drama in your organization. So those are a little bit about the intangible capitals, a little bit about how EOS can help. Remember, EOS is a journey. EOS is a journey to get to 80% strong on all 6 key components in your business so that you can run a better business and live a better life. And it also provides that value for the organization. Strategic buyers are more and more seeing EOS-driven companies, EOS-run companies, as inherently more valuable. And so they want to see that you're running on an operating system because it shows that you're dedicated, it shows you're committed, it shows you're building a culture that is strong and performance oriented. EOS really means operational excellence. That's what strategic buyers are looking for. It's a repeatable, scalable model, meaning if you have a strategic buyer coming in that's already operating on EOS, they want to bring in another EOS company because it fits like a glove. It means disciplined execution. It means that the people within the organization are likely disciplined because you're putting the right people in the right seats. So they're looking for that smooth integration into larger companies. That's why it inherently can mean the difference between, say, a 2x multiple on your business and a 6x multiple. Remember, results aren't guaranteed, and I am by no means an expert in the M&A process, but I do know value in a business. And when you build the value from within, the likelihood is much greater that you're going to get more of the value that you want on a sale. And it also means that you may not have to sell, which is important. And there's one final piece that I want to share that's really important here. And that is that before you decide to sell, you as the owner, the person who has been running their tail off for years to build this business, that's proud of it, but is also burned out. How do you prepare yourself? It's easy to think now when you're in the midst of the muck and the day-to-day and everything like that, you just want to get out of it. But I will tell you now that when you see 75% of owners regretting their decision to sell within a year, it's not just financial, it's also personal readiness that comes into play there. You want to make sure that you are getting yourself ready to sell. And this means, what does your life look like after exit? This is really about EOSing your own life. Build out your own personal VTO. Build out your own personal vision. What do you want 10 years from now? What does your 3-year picture look like? What's your 1-year plan beyond the sale? So that you have a plan for what you want to achieve, even if in that first 90 days to a year, you do absolutely nothing, but just have a plan to do something beyond that. Because I've seen so many owners who were at one time burned out running their business, feeling bored of just sitting around, not knowing what they're doing next, dabbling in certain things that are shiny objects, or losing everything that they had on a gamble because they didn't prepare themselves. Prepare yourself. Avoid that identity collapse, because that's one of the reasons why owners regret selling. It's not the money, it's not the buyer, it's not the deal. A lot of times it's the identity gap, the who am I beyond this business. So if you don't know who you are beyond the business, you're not going to be happy selling it. You have to prepare both the business and the person running it for the exit. Buyers look for that too. So just remember that you may be preparing to sell your business, but you don't have to sell your business. What you're doing is you're giving yourself the freedom of choice. You're giving yourself a quarterly decision to either sell or grow. And if you can build the inherent value in your business, you can evaluate it in your quarterly leadership team meetings, and you can evaluate it then. Do we want to sell this business or do we want to keep growing? So if you're ready to professionalize your business to strengthen those 4 intangible capitals, EOS is one of the best ways that you can do that. It's one of the most powerful investments that you can make. Whether you self-implement or you hire an implementer, it's not just for your business, it's for your life. Because the real ROI is not just a higher multiple, it's freedom, it's clarity, and it's time to live the life that you love and that you've wanted to love with the freedom that you've wanted for years. If you want help putting these systems in place, reach out. I'm happy to do so with an eye towards helping you plan your exit and implement these tools in your business.